Hello, everybody. Welcome to the work session of Tuesday, September 19th. We already did this, but we're gonna do it again. Can I have a motion to open the work session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you for joining us. While we're waiting for the chief to come up, why don't we skip to the next, the CVAC LOSAP?
You know
or
what, let's
do we
go
want
to,
him for
let's
that
go to the
too?
train station parking
Oh, that's an
discussion.
easy one, yeah.
So Christina, do you wanna take that? Want me to take it? Maybe you are.
Speak of
Oh,
the devil.
here's the chief.
I've just been.
Hi, buddy.
Never mind.
Do it.
I'm not talking about you, I swear.
I see that. Yep, there you go. Should we play hail to the chief?
Wrong chief. All right, we are just getting started, talking about yield and stop signs.
Yes.
Take it away.
So each one of the 4 recommendations were based on complaints from residents. So we went out and, did a survey and took a look at each location and, we compared it to the 90 uniform traffic control devices, which we're bound by. And, thought in every instance, except for hardscrabble, that there was a need for the sign and something in affect the residents in those areas. And then hardscrabble, I've been driving that for I don't know how many years. I didn't actually realize it was a yield going to the right, but it is. And it just doesn't make
That's
sense.
good.
It should, well, I know, I stop anyway, so it's not a problem. But it just makes sense that it be a stop on both ends. So,
It does
The
make
stop,
sense.
not a yield.
not a yield. So did you see the picture?
But
The
I
last
don't
picture
do
shows it's a stop sign if you're making a left or going straight, but it's a yield sign if you're going to the right.
I take this turn
It's
out
very
like 7
confusing.
times a day,
Yeah.
it's annoying.
Yeah, it's confusing, I
And
agree.
sometimes there are people that are walking and it's dangerous because it's
Because
not
you
a
don't
stop
see
and
'em,
some
right.
people just kind of fly through.
I don't like the intersection at all, really, because even coming the other way, making a left off hardscrabble, there's that stop sign there, and that sometimes backs up, but, let's start with this step and then we
It's a
can go forward.
confusing
It
intersection.
is.
Have there been any incidents there?
There have been some accidents over the years, yeah, not recently, there have been some accidents. So if maybe, depending on how this goes, I would want, before we change that anymore, to have actually a traffic engineer come in and take a look at that. Just because you got the island and that short stop, and it's been that way.
And then there's that extension across the,
Across the-
it is a very confusing.
It is. Ridge Road is, it makes it consistent with every other, street up in Kisco Park. Taylor Road, it's all Taylor Road, it's just feeding down from the top and, you could see how there's a confusion as to the.
Why not a
design.
stop, why not stops, why a yield?
The recommendation was always, if depending on, like an angle like that would be to do a yield first, and if the yield doesn't solve the problem, then you would escalate up to the stop sign.
And recommendation from the traffic, like from.
The manual uniform traffic control devices. So that's ideal, but like,
People
report
usually
it to T.
fly through that Taylor
Right, that's the
Road,
concern with
nobody
Taylor.
stops there. Or it's just, everyone just goes.
Yeah, so really the thoroughfares going around, and the other two
Yield's gonna
feeders,
help.
and there's a lot less traffic coming from them than going all the way through, so I think that's gonna help, and if not, we can, revisit another time. And then Trip Street, at the end of Trip Street where it comes into Sheether, right at the Armonk, there was no traffic control device there at all, that's why I went for a yield first there, just consider that though.
So just to get back to Taylor Road over there, you really don't think that should be a stop sign? I mean, people should technically be yielding there anyway, you're making a left turn, but
So
nobody does, they fly through and it's such a narrow street over there.
yeah, do you know exactly where it is? It's all the way up at the top of the curve?
I know exactly where it is.
Okay, so it's coming, people coming.
Not near Woodland though.
Yes,
No, it's not by Woodland, the issue is where Taylor and Taylor meet.
do you have the map in front of you?
He has one at Taylor and Taylor.
Yeah, that, I'm talking about not the Taylor and Woodland, I'm talking about this one, the Taylor and Taylor one. I feel like should be a stop sign. The Taylor and Woodland, a yield feels appropriate, but the Taylor and Taylor, people just turn really quickly and aren't looking at all.
There we go.
Can you go directly to a stop
that's-
sign or do
it's
you have
actually
to
a
do a
stop
yield
So,
first?
I certainly could, but the recommendation is normally to go through a yield first. Yeah, because for so many years, there hasn't been anything there at all, right?
There's been nothing there, but I personally, cause that's actually my neighborhood, I don't live right near there, I live on the other end of the neighborhood, but I've seen so many near misses of cars because they're turning, it's so narrow and everyone just flies through it.
Well,
And there's also Upper Taylor where, so it's like 3 roads all converging into one tiny little area.
Well, what we can do is if you guys decide to move forward with these, we can actually do enforcement out there. And you know, and then see, you know, further what's going on, and then maybe we do upgrade or do change it that.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm comfortable.
It feels like if there's nothing there now,
Nothing there.
right?
Right.
So maybe,
Yeah.
maybe just the
And
visual
no,
signal.
and it's the residents that are violating, right? I mean, you're
Right,
not.
not many people are coming in to drive Taylor Road.
No,
Right.
no, it's actually a huge cut through.
Yeah,
Really?
the main
Huge
thoroughfare
cut
is
through
the
because it
cut-through,
takes you
but
right out to
coming down from
128.
the
From
front.
128.
I guess,
Yeah,
if
it
you,
does.
yeah, I guess
And
if
you
you
should take
really
that.
wanna avoid that, that's,
If you want to avoid 117, it
kind
takes
of.
you directly to
That is, I
128
guess I
into
meant,
Armonk.
the yield sign is actually coming from the people who are residents from Woodland and from Taylor. There's very limited vehicles coming from that area.
From up,
From up,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, no, that's true.
Okay.
Alright, Chief.
And I
Okay.
generally
Any
trust
questions?
your recommendation.
Alright,
Thank you all.
Thank you.
do we need Chief for anything else?
The whole thing, you round this out.
You know, the only thing would be the discussion about the agenda for CCSD, our joint meeting, but
At the EV car show?
oh.
Yeah, and the Halloween dog parade.
Yeah, so why don't we just talk about those couple, just while
Get closer.
here. Don't leave so quickly.
I don't have any issue with the EV car show. We did it in the past.
Yeah.
And if you guys approve it, we can definitely put up signage and block off the spaces for it.
And how about the dog parade?
What is the dog parade? I don't remember the dog parade.
It's actually very cute, they did a very small one last year, but they wanna do a bigger one this year. I mean, I shouldn't talk, you're
Maybe
the,
clean
you're
up
the,
enforcement?
you're the liaison, you can talk.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything
But
about it,
I
other than
think
our
what they
email,
wanted,
but I
from
love
what I understand, is that they wanted to use the area where they were during community day to the right of farmer's market instead of in the circle.
Okay.
I mean,
Just
the
for parade
circle
itself?
may be in the, would be the farmer's market, but then the dog parade would take place to the right.
In that blue area?
Kind of where the farmer's market
Yeah.
was for.
Where the farmer's market was for community
day.
day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's the same place the EV show's gonna go. So I mean,
Okay,
you
so
guys.
no
They're not the
problem.
same day, right?
the farmer's market and the dog parade are the same day.
I don't think
No,
the
but
same
the
day.
The
No,
EV show, no,
no,
that's
no,
not the same
no,
day,
no.
no.
I'm fine with my end, we can make it work, if you guys want that.
Okay.
Okay.
I actually
The dogs were really cute.
personally
I'd love
think it would be cuter to have the dogs go the route of the ragamuffin parade and actually walk out of the train station and make that loop and come back and actually walk around town. How cute would that be?
Well, that's like a parade.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
it's a
can do
dog
that,
parade.
they can do that during the
It's a
ragamuffin
pet
parade, they can
parade.
dress them up and they can do it then.
Well, why don't, people do.
People do.
I know.
But like, how cute would that be?
I mean, to have our officers.
But
Is
how
that a
disruptive
change in
would
that?
that
Yeah,
be?
it's
Just
just-
spending all the
They have
time.
to shut down.
For the dogs.
They
Shut
have
down
to
the
shut
street.
down the street.
For the
Yeah.
dog parade.
Okay.
Okay.
Bad ideas for the dog.
I do like dogs now.
There we go now.
Yes,
Run.
run.
I'm gonna hate them.
There's no gangs associated with EV cars, are gonna show up in town in mass.
I absolutely hope not.
EV car.
Thank you. Alright, Steve, you wanna do train station or CVAC?
Oh, those are like regular.
Yeah, let's start with, let's CVAC LOSAP.
Probably remember earlier this year, we were approached by CVAC. They
like
have
$1
had
million.
trouble retaining members or attracting new members to CVAC for a while. And in the course of that discussion, we found out that we're really one of the few municipalities in the area that doesn't offer a LOSAP program, which is actually a pension program for volunteers. Fire departments have it and they're their own taxing entities and so they've approved it and it just was never anything that was ever on our radar. No one ever brought it to our attention. We weren't aware that we were missing it and now they brought it to our attention. So we've had some quotations and I'll preface this, really my only concern is the tax cap this year. So this will definitely affect the tax cap. Whatever we have now, we're adding to the budget, something that wasn't there before. So I've kind of worked up an estimate. We've got a few different estimates from PenFlex, which is the administrator of the LOSAP program, that talks about the different benefits. And the chart I prepared, so basically, if you put in a certain number, I don't know if it's hours, but you get service credits for each year.
Right.
And you have to go on a certain number of calls or be available a certain number of days, do training, et cetera.
It's both, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
and once you do, you get points for the year. You achieve enough points and you get credit for the pension year. So the benefit could either be $20 or $30 per month per year of service that you have, up to a maximum of 40 years of service. And then the other option that they provided
Is that
to us,
retroactive at all?
well,
Well, that's-
there's an option for that, to go back 5 years retroactive. and
That's what they,
apply this
Jeremy,
credit.
if
Oh, I
you
see.
recall, they had originally asked us to go retroactive and it was something like $2 million, right? It was
It's a
really
lot of money.
expensive.
Well,
I don't
it's,
So
recall
we
the exact
tabled
conversation.
it.
I don't know, okay, thank
Well,
you for reminding me.
yeah, so in the chart you see, so basically if you look at if we went with the $20 program and we went with the $20 retro, without the retro, it's $67,000 a year. When you add the retro, it's $117,000 for 5 years until you've paid off the retroactive amount, and then it would revert back to the 67. You know, these are estimates in today's dollars. I'm sure that number goes up each year, but that's where we're estimated right now. Then if you wanna do $30 a month with no retro, that's $101,000. If you wanted to add retro at also $30 a month, it would be $171,000. And they gave us an option to add retro, the 5 years of retro service for $20 a month, and that's $151,000.
Do you have a sense for what the standard is in the area?
What town Kisco just?
I think they just increased it to 30. 30 is the max, I think, which is what they quoted us originally. There's I think under state law, there's a maximum that they can provide, and I think it is $30 for 40 years. So we did go back and ask for another quote that was something a little bit less. Mount Kisco had a program for years and then just recently increased it.
It was very modest,
Last
the
year.
original program.
It might have been 15 that they had, and they may have, I don't recall whether they increased it to 20 or 30, but they did recently just do that.
Yeah, just this past
Yeah,
year,
we did
remember,
this
yeah,
last year, we
Gina
met with
came in to
Gina.
speak with us.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, Nick, that you're aware of that would somehow be able to carve this out of the tax cap? There's no way to do that.
Unfortunately, it was not.
Municipalities don't get to carve really much out.
No.
We do.
No. So that's the financial part of it. The other part of it's kind of logistical and kind of missed this boat a little bit over the summer, although I think with the notifications, we probably wouldn't have been able to do it anyway. But this actually is subject to a mandatory referendum. So the board would approve it, and then
Right.
between 30 and 90 days after
Right.
the board approves it, we would have to put it to the town.
So there's
for
no-
mandatory
A special election.
There's no requirement for a, there is,
expensive too.
Yes.
there's no requirement for a public hearing, but it does require 60% of the board, so 4 out of the 5 board members, you need to adopt a resolution. There's certain questions you need to, decisions you need to make at the time of a resolution, and then the mandatory referendum must be held within 30 days or no later than 90 days.
So is there a way we can tag it on to the general election?
Because we had to let the Board of Elections know by April that we were interested in putting a resolution on the ballot, and that is beyond the 30 to 90 days that's required by the statute. So they don't anticipate that you're gonna piggyback this on, although it would have made tremendous sense.
Could you do it for the primary next year at the same time?
But which finance?
I don't know that the Board of Elections would let you put something, their rule of thumb is 6 months. Is what Board of Elections needs.
I'm sorry, their rule of thumb is 6 months.
6 months to be able to put something on a ballot, one of their ballots,
So why not,
whether it be.
Well,
Why not
we could do it
in
for
June?
June.
Well, I'm just saying, it's just a statement of fact, it's a long way away.
right, but
But we would have to,
we'd still be about 6 months to get to a special election too, right?
we could do a special election, we could do it in December, we could do it in November.
Right, as long as you do it
6,000.
outside of the Board of Election scheduled election.
Okay, it doesn't take a long time to get that ramped up.
But what does it cost? I'm saying it's expensive, I feel like it is, you need machines, you need everything else.
We need a machine,
Because we'd have a central polling
we
place,
would
right?
have one
Yeah,
central
one
polling place,
polling
town
place.
hall, set it up and we'd have election inspectors, we don't have to we don't have to be here from 6 to 9, we can do it from, I mean, the fire district elections are less than
But is there a
18
different,
hours.
is there a different rule for municipalities for something that's a mandatory referendum?
I would have to check, I don't know that.
So really, other than the machine,
Poll
Poll
workers.
Poll workers.
Yeah, produce an advertisement.
Printing a ballot,
Yeah, printing a ballot and
printing a list of eligible voters.
yeah, the list of eligible voters is the only thing that's gonna take a little bit of finesse by us. I think we
We
can
can
do
get
it.
that from the Board of Elections pretty easily,
No, so we needed to mirror our special district, which is
Oh.
WEMS. So it's ALS,
Got
so
it.
it's everybody who doesn't have OVAC, and I believe it basically
well, most of the
mirrors.
ones. Or most of the ones.
Yeah, 97%.
But
So I think it's like election district number 2, that's all the way out on the west end.
Mhm.
It's some portion of that
Got it.
that is not included in the election.
We
That would
only-
not be eligible to vote.
But but if it's coming, I'm just curious, but it's coming from the town coffer, they still are responsible for the tax, they just can't vote?
No, it's
No,
not
that's
coming-
why they wouldn't
This is
be.
only a special
It's coming
district,
from the
so
special
this is
district.
only.
It's the town board acting as the board of the
So
special
this district would mirror the advanced life
Gotcha.
support,
Yep.
because the other portion of this, the 3% is OVAC,
Right.
and they have kind of like a hybrid, they have advanced and volunteer.
So we should find out how much it costs to do the special election, what any hourly requirements
We
that
did this last time, I remember what
We did have,
For release.
I mean,
I
No,
think
that-
before, I think
regardless of the
that was
cost.
a permissive, you talking about the train station,
Yes,
that was.
I think
I thought
before
we
we
did
get
it.
to what is the special election cost, I mean, that might inform what we wanna do in terms of money here, but it's a one-time cost. I think we need to figure out if we wanna do this.
I don't think it's more than 5,000.
Yeah, but I think we need to figure out if we wanna offer this and then
What do we wanna offer?
what we wanna offer it as and, you know, keeping in mind our ongoing financial obligations.
Well, I mean, I also wanna be considerate this has to go out to a mandatory referendum.
Yes.
And this is a lot of money.
Mhm.
And I wanna make sure that when we do put it out, it's reasonable to assume that people can be informed and get out and make the vote. So which is, that's my.
That's more of a, I think that's more of a given, we're doing everything we have
Right.
to do that.
We need to figure out what we would
Well,
put
are
on
we
the
the out,
referendum.
it matters for
And
the
not offering
time.
this?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
But I think we need to make the decision what we wanna offer, like you gotta put the cart, we don't wanna put the cart before the horse, right?
have to do that.
So I think that's what we should discuss now, and then of course, we would make sure there's appropriate communication and we'd have to do a referendum or not, if we decide we don't wanna do this at all.
I mean, so conceptually, I am 100% in favor of doing this, because for lots of reasons. One is that we're the outlier, 2, that I know that they're having trouble recruiting volunteers, and anything that's gonna help, it's better in the long run than the
A paid department
alternatives.
will make these numbers.
Yeah.
Tell.
So I mean, I agree.
Me too.
To me, it was more a question of which of these, not.
Yeah,
not
I
if.
agree with that, and we're very lucky to have a volunteer force,
Yep.
so.
Absolutely. My thought though, since the point of this is to attract new volunteers,
Mhm.
I'm less in favor of retroactive payments. I don't necessarily like that, and there may be people who aren't even there anymore who are potentially entitled to retroactive payments. They're already there, they're already committed to CVAC, they can take advantage of this going forward as well. I'm really, this is not an insignificant amount of money, so I would prefer not to do this retroactively. I think going forward though, it's an excellent idea, and I think especially given that we are one of the only ambulance corps who don't offer this, I think it's something we definitely should.
I think if it puts less financial strain and it makes it more likely that we do it, I think we do it moving forward.
And we
I
can,
mean, it is future looking.
we can raise the rate too, so we could start at 20, and then if they come back to us in 2 years and they say we're still having trouble and we we can look at it again,
You
right?
could.
Doesn't preclude us from
I-
increasing it if you years down the line.
I mean, Mount Kisco's just done that, so I would believe that you can. I'm not certain, there might be at some point that you could apply retroactivity in the future if you felt like it. You know, I mentioned before, and you'll see during the budget this year, this will be a particularly difficult budget with the tax cap for reasons such as this, which would be added to a budget that wasn't in last year's. We have a sewer district that has come online up at Chappaqua Crossing. The operation and maintenance has to get added to the budget, which wasn't there last year. Northern Fire Protection is increasing again as the I guess the second borrowing that Mount Kisco did for their firehouses now hits our budget.
Yes.
You know, that is just the special districts and the refuse. We're still trying to climb to that point
That
with
refuse
the-
is-
And our insurance went up,
I think.
too.
our insurance went up, so there's a ton of stuff. And what's difficult too, we do have a sizable fund balance in the general fund, and I'm certain we'll be drawing down some of that for general fund activities. These special districts, we can't do that with. You know, it's 97% of the town, but it's not 100% of the town, so I can't use general fund funds to pay for something that 97% of the town will benefit from. The refuse, again, that applies to almost everybody, but not commercial property owners. So there's, you know, we can make it happen, but
Has CVAC given us any information on like maybe how their recruiting has been impacted or anything like that, or is this kind of the
so they
sense?
met with us earlier in the year. I felt like it was at the tail end of last year,
Yeah,
maybe
beginning
drifted into this
this
year,
year,
because
yeah.
they talked, you know, they originally approached us and said, we want some help from the town, and we asked what that would look like, and, you know, the
We phoned an
conversation.
ambulance, but it turned out it was this.
Yeah, we were hoping it was something we can,
$30,000, they were like, no,
yeah,
not
that's
exactly.
not what we had in mind,
Right.
so,
You know, I wanna talk to them too about it, cause I know personally that there are people who applied to be on CVAC. The interview was so nuts, they turned them away, and then they just went to work at Mount Kisco at CVAC. So, or at their
Yeah, I
ambulance,
think it would be
so
helpful to see.
I wanna
what
talk to them too
CVAC
about their recruiting techniques, because I know they turned people away who were willing to work.
Regardless, that may be true or not, I
Yeah.
don't know, but regardless of the recruiting techniques, regardless of how they're getting new members, the service that they're providing is unrivaled in terms of dollars.
Absolutely.
And I would give a full throat of, you know,
Really, all
yay
of that.
for,
Wow.
yes, for at least the $20. I agree that retroactively, unfortunately, when you're looking at these numbers, especially with $30,
It's real.
you're talking $164,000 as opposed to the $20 going forward, 60, roughly $100,000 difference, which is incredibly significant when we're that
Mhm.
tight in a budget with a lot of these things coming online, and we can still revisit it. So I don't see any scenario in my mind where I would oppose at least the $20 going forward. Whether we do 30, I'd have to get more numbers on that to see how that works, but I fully support at least the 20 going forward.
And
I'd
one
like to
thing to
know-
keep in, one thing to keep in mind is that once you adopt the service program, the New York State General Municipal Law, section 219-L governs this program. It says if you want to terminate the program later on, it's subject to a supermajority vote of the board and a mandatory referendum. If you want to change the benefits, it's subject to a mandatory referendum.
Right, so if you wanna raise it in the future, we have to do another.
That's correct, Vicky, yes.
But in the future.
Or
that
it could coincide with the
or
general
decrease
election.
election,
Yeah.
yes.
Right,
Piggyback.
right. Well, I think that,
Do we know if there's a difference in attractiveness to new recruits
That's what it's gonna be.
between 20 and 30? Because I'd feel pretty comfortable, you know, starting with the lower one and seeing if it gives them the bump that they expect.
yeah, I don't know the answer, I mean, obviously, everybody would prefer to have more money, but right now, there's nothing. So to go from nothing to $20 a month, if you put 20 years in, that's not a bad number.
I'd like to see how we can make that one happen and
yeah, and also the more so that if we have a special election, you only have certain people who pay very close attention come out to those. And I'd be afraid that a higher amount would lose the referendum.
would trigger a different.
That was part of my concern.
Really?
I
Some
think-
people be like $10, I think conceptually like $10, it's only $10.
Well, I think that people
Conceptually,
don't want their taxes
Totally
raised,
get
Yeah.
they just don't want it and people will come out.
I think let's start off at the lower amount. And if we decide to increase it later on, we can certainly plan it so that we can get it on the ballot for an election, on the reverse of the ballot, so that we don't have to spend extra money on that. And let's see, we can always increase it, but it would be very difficult, nor would we want to decrease it.
No,
So
I
I
would
think
think
let's
so.
start off lower, let's see, it's our first time, and frankly, our budget's very tight. So I'm happy to do it, but we also need to be fiscally responsible here.
Yeah,
And
with
the
the
last
tax
thing I
cap,
wanna do is break the tax cap,
I
because
think everybody,
yeah,
Yeah.
if you're able to do things incrementally with the tax cap, it works, right? I mean, but to add one large lump sum when there wasn't anything the year before is difficult.
Yes.
I could add 67,000 and then, more money in a year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on the situation.
And that's what makes the
ask.
most sense and is the most
we could plan
responsible.
for an
Yes,
increase,
let's
yes.
commit to looking at this in like 2 more years.
Yes.
I have a question, Nick, I know in the past we've tried to do things like parking benefits for our first responders, and that was, for lack of a better term, shot down because we can't do it.
I believe he
Was
was
that me?
there.
It's a good reason to shoot it down.
I use the term in a non-legal sense because the law is the law. I almost find it inconceivable that there's not something for first responders. Can you home
You could, we
something
could do
like that?
special legislation, yes.
We could home
We
rule.
could, you could ask for that, yes.
So we could say, we wanna give our first responders X benefits.
You have to get the assembly and senate to sponsor it, and yes.
So do you wanna do that for camp? Like
Yeah,
giving
camp
them
and
the
parking, I
waiting,
think.
to give a
Camp
camp
fees.
discount.
discount.
the only thing about commuting into the city is that then they're not here to respond.
I agree,
But
I
think, but
think
either
parking,
way,
no.
if they're commuting to the city, they're commuting to the city. In other words, they're doing their job during the day, so it's not like all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait a second, I got a discount on parking, I'm gonna start working in Manhattan.
But the alternative is why are we giving them, they're only parking there if they're going into Manhattan, so why are we giving them a discount on parking for them to go in Manhattan? It's not gonna
Because it's
cause
the
them
same
to
way
go
as-
into
No,
Manhattan.
it's the same, I think our first responders, whether the fire department or the police are voluntary, obviously, but or CVAC guys and gals, any benefit they get, I think is a good benefit. So if they have kids, they're not all gonna use it, but they don't have kids, they get a little discount off of camp. If they happen to be commuting in the city already, they get even if it's a 10% discount. They're not gonna break the bank, it's not gonna change their life in terms of using all of a sudden parking, all of a sudden sending their kids to camp. And we can absorb something like that, so I think we should consider, we don't have to decide that now, but home rule.
Yeah, I would really like to look at that too, Jeremy.
Same.
So we make a lot of money from parking, so we need, we can run the numbers, let's see what the options are, but I'm all in favor of looking at other ways we can incentivize them, because when it comes down to it, if we can't get enough volunteers and we have to pay for these departments, it's gonna be
We're blowing
way
up.
more
Way worse,
expensive.
yeah.
There goes our.
Yeah, that's right.
Nick had a good point, which was, if we were to do the $20 increment, that maybe we could break it down, what would it look like for the average resident? What do you?
Oh,
think?
sure, it would be really negligible, honestly, when you're talking about 67,000 in a district over 97% of the community,
A couple.
it won't be much. Again, my whole problem is the tax
The
cap,
tax
not
cap.
Right.
not doing this at all, not that this would even be a big impact on residents, it wouldn't.
So my thought, if we're gonna go forward with this, if Nick said we have to, I'm sorry, from the time we adopt this to the time, we have 30 days for a special election?
Between 30 and 90 days, the resolution adopting it has to set what that date is.
Okay, because I would personally like to at least get the concept out before we adopt the resolution, just to make sure our residents know about this concept and start to think about it before that clock starts running.
If we're not required to have a public hearing, can we still opt for one?
You can, absolutely.
It would be like more like a public presentation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would give us an idea of how
Right,
people are feeling
before-
about it.
I think this is all of it, yeah.
So one of the questions that we have to answer is the entitlement each, so that's something I would like to talk to CVAC about. what is the earliest age someone can?
Probably 18, right?
No, regardless of age, they can receive the benefit.
Yes,
For retirement.
55.
So I don't know if that's a 55 thing, I don't know if that's a
Is
60,
it
I don't
pretty,
know
is
if
it
it's
pretty uniform among the
And then you
municipalities
don't
that
need the
have it?
Yeah, I'm curious what it is.
That I don't
Not
know.
watching the annual.
Yeah.
I'm not certain.
55 seems quite young.
You can probably
It
get
does
this from
seem
other
young.
programs.
I don't,
Most
Considering it's not that
retirement
far away.
benefits don't start at
It's
55.
very, I remember it well, yeah.
Can we
All due
find
respect,
out
you're
what
looking
the
at-
other, what other
Congress,
municipalities
yeah.
do?
I'll
You know,
find out,
Mount
now
Kisco, what local,
yeah,
Pleasantville local ones, what they do in
Probably
terms of retirement
10 bucks to
age
tell you
and
that.
what they're offering.
yeah, why don't we ask them? Okay, and so just as an aside but related, so tomorrow we have a WEMS meeting, which is Westchester EMS, which handles our advanced life support for 97% of our population. It's a consortium of a number of municipalities that we're involved with, and they will share the costs. One of the things that we noticed is that there was a drag on the system in that we had free fly cars available, you don't even need things like that to be out and about, but that we had some crunch times that were making our response times not as prompt as we would like. So I asked them to take and calculate the numbers if we added a fly car for that crunch time to help reduce our response time. So our ambulance shows up closer to 5 minutes rather than 10 minutes or 15 minutes.
Can I just clarify,
Sure.
this is across the WEMS district,
Yes.
not within Newcastle, or, okay.
WIMS is our ALS, so it is our advanced life support for 97% of our residents. Only OVAC, the far west end of our town is serviced by OVAC, Austin Volunteer and Hudson, and they have a hybrid model, so they provide both basic life support and advanced life support. Anyway, I asked WEMS whether or not they would work out the numbers of what that additional fly car for 12 hours a day, not 24, but just the 12 when the crunch was. And it ends up being $400,000, 60,000 of which would be Newcastle's share. This is gonna be presented to the consortium tomorrow for their vote on it.
That's 400,000 a year?
60 because we
60,000
apportion
for
it
us.
among,
It's a
any number of
12-hour crunch period?
12 hours a day, yes. So not the overnight hours, but during the regular hours. That's how they have to staff it, so that's.
And that's something else we can't use fund balance for.
No, that would be,
Yeah, I have a little bit of fund balance in this district and that's
At the
what
moment.
I,
Mhm.
so
that would be
this
useful.
would cover this is the same district unfortunately that we're talking about, so.
It's a safety thing, and so it's something that we use, and I just wanted to mention to the board, this is something that I think is really important. I think, response time of our ambulances, people expect that when they call 911, that people are coming, they're coming promptly.
A couple of bucks a year is probably
Yeah,
not a big deal for a
you know.
life.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the one that's waiting, 10 minutes is a long time, 15 minutes is way too long.
Did you mention how many minutes that wait time could be reduced?
The wait time is supposed to be between, 7 and 8, it's right in there because WEMS covers a pretty significant area. We go all the way up to where's Martin Lucas and Lewisboro? So Lewisboro, they're dispatched out of
North
Mount
sorry.
Yeah, they're dispatched out of Mount Kisco right next to the hospital, and they do we're relatively close. But it all depends when, where the fly cars are coming from and the EMTs that are responding. And, our police are terrific, most of them are EMTs and they respond as well. But, there's just, when you take a look at the numbers, it's a little.
There's room for improvement.
There's some room for improvement. Obviously, would it be better if we were in a, denser place that was smaller than 25 square miles? Sure. But, this is where we live and it takes time for people to get from one side of town to the other.
Mhm.
And that's time that you're sitting there waiting. Anyway, so I want to make sure that it was okay with the board. Sorry about the timing with LOSAP, but it is.
Well, I actually think it's good timing because that factoring in, we're trying to add LOSAP. And we've kind of made the decision, the $20, the lower end with no retro, and I think all this comes into play, right? Because it's affecting the same fund, the same district, the same taxpayers. I think,
Yeah, because that justifies the 20
yeah, I
even
think
more,
so.
so.
I mean, I can't promise that that's the way the vote is gonna go tomorrow.
No,
We'll vote.
But yeah, you have to be prepared.
But we have fund balance to cover it,
Some.
We have some, yeah.
but it doesn't cover it, or it does?
No, that doesn't cover the
I
whole
would,
thing.
yeah, I would probably use about $50,000 in fund balance to offset
it's
what the
close.
total in this district.
At some point, which we all agree, depending what it is, there's a need to have and wanna have. And I would argue that at least some might say it's want, but I think it's a need to have in terms of that retirement pension, I think that's what you wanna have.
Yeah.
Obviously, what you're saying is a need to have, not a wanna have. And the more we add into this, unfortunately, that means the wanna haves, they have to shrink or find grant money, or find other means to fund it.
Or wait a year or two.
So,
No, I think it's important to.
I agree, I think these two things go hand in hand.
thank you for telling us we have more money that we have to spend.
Oh, I love to hear that.
Yeah, yeah.
When she walked in my office today. I just found out this afternoon.
Just looking at some budget numbers, just wondering how $60,000 seems like, it's close. Okay, train station parking. Fun fact, do you know the last time we raised parking rates in Newcastle?
When?
No.
I thought we did it in the past few years.
You've been on the board a
I
while.
would
Yeah.
say
Been
it's
on the
like,
board a while.
But it was
15
when I was on
years,
the board, I think.
20 years,
Yeah.
10 years ago.
10 years ago?
So what, now we're,
Oh, we made parking
make,
tickets.
we'll make
No, it
some
was
money.
what? Yeah, 15, 16.
Oh.
Yeah, it was,
15 or 14, 15.
14, 15.
Tis time.
It may be unfavorable, but now we're talking about spending money on it.
Yep.
It's all hits the taxpayer.
So,
Time to make
why
some
we did it back
increases.
then, the justification back then, and we raised it $50
Mhm.
was, that's when we started
We paid it.
repaving the parking lot back there. And for whatever reason, when this was set up originally, there was no special district
I
for
thought
that.
we did do that.
We
Didn't
did.
we do something?
We
Well-
paved
Yeah.
the entire parking lot, we put in new lights,
Yeah,
we put in new guardrails, yeah, that's
we
what.
created
that's what
special,
funding-
not 15 years ago.
No, we didn't,
No, I'm making this
I
up.
feel like we did, no?
Yeah, I thought we did too.
Yeah.
No. Unfortunately, that all came out of the general fund. The revenue went in the general fund and the expenses were coming out of the general fund. So that's why we increased it years ago, and what we have been doing since then is we've had $125,000 from operating transfer to capital each year, which was a little more than what the increase in parking fee was, but we needed these improvements. So that's where we are, but since then, since the original work, we've done the tertia, the culvert. So there's been a lot of work done in
Yeah.
the train station parking lot that we have to
Tremendous.
But
fund.
again, that was a need to have. It was a
Right.
hole.
Yeah, and that was, if you remember, that
Zero.
collapsed.
Yeah, someone
Yeah.
said, oh, there's a hole. You
Somebody
need
said,
to-
hey, there's a hole,
Yeah.
we have to look, we're
You
like,
can
oh
see
my
the
gosh.
water.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was some hole.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it used to be that people were tripping and getting seriously hurt walking to their car on the parking
Yeah,
lots
we had
because
some
of
claims.
So-
Yeah, that was, then I
Potholes.
remember we came in and did all that, yeah.
tremendous difference.
Yeah, that and then the volume of parking is down. I mean, yes, we've seen the lot get fuller than it has been, but it's
What
not.
are our numbers, if you had a estimate by the end of the year, what percentage you have?
2/3 to 3/4 of what
Yeah.
it was before.
Pre-COVID?
Yeah.
2/3 to 3/4, is it growing, do you have an idea? If
It's growing, sure, yeah.
It is growing.
Not on a Friday, depends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Friday or Mondays,
Yeah.
the train are pretty quiet.
But we used to have $900,000 to $950,000 a year. We've been budgeting 600 and we haven't made that number,
In this year, we're not gonna hit that either.
no.
Have we taken a look at if there's a different balance to the structure of parking permits and fees that might be more beneficial? I'm worried if we start talking about increasing the everyday permits, that what we'll end up having is fewer people who want to get it, and so like the net may not increase, but perhaps would there be more appetite, and I mean, obviously you have to do some more
Well-
research, but to increase the number of daily parking and increase the fee there, that way you can recapture anybody who may drop off as you
So
say.
didn't we increase the non-resident?
So
Fee.
we increased the non-resident fee, the non-resident fee is 1,300, the resident is 500 for the annual. The non-residents can't purchase meter permits, we don't allow them to purchase the daily permits. If the residents wish to go with the meter, it's actually much more expensive than if they were to go with the $500 annual.
If you do the math.
Yeah,
Especially
we do
if
the
you
math.
take it or two.
Yes,
Right.
you have to remember, to
Yeah.
display it, you have to remember to feed the meter. So you get a couple tickets and it's much more expensive. So, and
But do
we
you
do
think
offer
people
flexibility.
We have the ability, the way our I'm sorry, the way our parking machines work is that after 9 o'clock in the morning, if you have a pay by day permit, you can park anywhere in the back lot, you just say it.
Okay,
So we have
That
space
explains
for,
that.
Yeah.
we have that flexibility, we could make
Not
it
for-
earlier than 9
Not for
o'clock.
non-residents. Non-residents, the only way they can park is if they're in one of the non-resident spots or they,
Which is
Pay the
since we just
$1,300.
moved to a less desirable location.
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
but I shouldn't say non-resident, permitted
Right.
spots, because we have a lot of residents that use those spots. But the, so we never really, so people with meter prints are never really shut out. They don't, they may go there and those spots may be filled, but they can
park somewhere.
park in lot B
Yeah.
just as the annual permit person would do, but they pay by plate.
So we're talking
Okay,
about
so-
raising the cost of the annual per
Well,
parking pass?
It's really, well, I was thinking we should do both because I think that's fair and I think you get, I don't know, everything goes up, right? And the fact that we wait so long to increase it, then it's a bigger hit. So I'm kind of more in favor of doing it more frequently, it's kind of easier to people to swallow. But at this point, I think we need to raise it both. And
do you think that we could have more non-permit parking given the changes in commuting patterns?
I think we had,
Those
I
are the
could
ones
ask
that
the
are more
chief,
expensive.
yeah, I could get, no, those are
Those
The
ones we just
non-resident
moved to the
ones.
far.
the non-resident.
Anecdotally, I parked there a bunch of times, and there are times, if I went in late, it would be full. But I'm curious if the same thing's gonna happen if I'm parking all the way over there. Now I'm gonna be inclined, A, it's cheaper, I don't go in enough. But now I'm probably inclined just to buy a regular pass, because
That's,
if it's gonna be cheaper for me to have a pass, and I'm gonna park closer, why the heck am I gonna
Yeah.
park back there?
Yeah.
so that's
That
what
makes
I'm
sense.
seeing now, that people are like, I don't wanna walk.
Yeah,
I'll
that's
just
why
get
I
the
do
ticket.
that.
Yep, so I could ask the police department to monitor, but as I've been casually observing it, they're not filled up that often. The
Okay.
non-permit spots, yeah.
Got that right.
Mhm.
That was not the case when it was in the front.
No,
Yeah.
it definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
The other thing we're contemplating doing is, our parking season used to run from June 14th to June 15th. And we extended it to December when we were hoping to capture more revenue during COVID. That never happened. And so we're stuck with this December renewal at this point, and everybody hates it. It's very convenient for people, it's like in the middle of holidays, we've got everything going on, it's hard for our tax collection because, we're in the middle of school tax collection at the same time, so we would like to be able to just restore it back to the June. So it would mean that this year, if in fact the board did agree to an increase in the annual permits, that annual permit at least would have resulted in an 18-month as opposed to a 12-month. So the year before, they would get 18 months. So it'll be last
we slide out
December
the
to
renewal date.
June 14th of 2024, before they have to renew.
I think that's fine, but people might get confused a little, you just have to
Yeah.
No,
put out a
we'll
lot
have
of.
to
put
do
it on
that.
It's a little amnesty
we
too
always put it on the electronic sign here, everyone exits that way and sees it.
But
It is.
yeah,
Makes
I
sense.
think you should do that.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, I think
It's
it's
easier for
communication.
town staff.
Yeah, and it's really easier for the public, the merchants hate that we did it over
Yeah, I think it's a
over
hard time for the
December. It's really
merchants,
tough on
Right,
hard
like
for
catch
residents in the
people by
holiday, people
surprise.
go away.
If you
And-
remember.
Well, and I think most people plan their cycle here around the school calendar, and that
Yes.
aligns with the school
Yes.
calendar pretty
Yes.
closely.
So I'm in favor of both, of changing the date and increasing the fees for both
Thank you.
permits.
Yes.
You know, and I think especially given fiscal, realities,
Yeah.
it's important to do that.
Do we have numbers that go with this?
I didn't have a chance to prepare them, we kind of just
Okay.
had
I
a
think
chance
it
to
makes
discuss.
Conversation.
I think it makes a lot of sense to
Yeah.
raise it and get on the right cycle, but I just am curious what it does to the numbers and what the proposed increase is.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking $50, right?
Yeah, $50 for the standard permit, and then
From 40 to 50 for the
The
regular.
$10 increase.
Yes, do you wanna
$10
leave the
for the
seniors the way it is?
seniors are $20 and they get 2 permits for $20. They get one and then they get one free. So that's up to the board's
That's
pleasure,
okay.
those are for, that's some people that are still working, but there's people who visit children in the city or doctor's appointments, that type of thing.
I would leave
I
the
don't know.
seniors.
Why did they get one free?
I'm not sure, I think, so originally they used to list multiple plates on the permits and people had to switch them, but people weren't switching them.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I think this is just a way of making it less,
Just easier.
less confusing for the seniors, they don't have to remember to move the permit and that kind of thing, or the people who aren't working and they're home and then they wanna go in for a matinee and they don't have a permit.
But now, does it work that way now? Because now you're just zapping the license plate.
No, we still look at, we don't have a plate reader for the,
For those, okay.
yeah, for the meter. That's manually checked. I mean.
I would leave the senior rates
agree.
the
Okay.
same.
So the seniors.
Okay,
I have to say, I
How
find
are
our
we defining
parking system
seniors?
confusing.
65 and over,
Everybody 65 and older?
they're eligible for the metered, only the metered permit.
I mean, the reality is, how often is that used? I mean, both spouses are working at over 65, I guess, both partners, that's potential, but it's probably not used that much.
You know, Christian,
We
we
can
can
tell-
pull numbers.
Yeah.
We have
Yep.
that capability.
I can,
I think what we need to figure out to do better is enforce people parking 2 cars if the license plate is being zapped.
yeah,
Right.
That's a bigger issue, because I think that happens ample times.
it does, and then they come in and lie that they don't have 2 cars there.
Yeah, so I think
They did, it happened today, and the guy, you catch them in the lie, and they're looking at you, oh no, I can park 2 cars there. No, you can't.
Yeah, I think that enforcement is critical.
Is there a way to,
We have license plate readers, so
We have a
yeah,
license plate
should-
reader, so the second one should get a ticket, so they can get a ticket, and then they go, no, I didn't have 2 cars there.
Well, they say, oh, look, I've got a permit.
I have a permit, yours, didn't work.
There was a time when we couldn't figure that out, correct?
well, I think our
We
license
didn't have the
reader
reader.
was down, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what do we do when they come in and they tell you that they didn't have 2 cars, but you have,
Take it to
So-
the prosecutor.
yeah,
Right.
go to the judge.
so that is what we do?
Mhm.
Yeah, if it's something where it's
Enforcement.
something with our, there are certain plates that don't read correctly, like some personalized plates, and we're aware of those. And we also have had quite a few changes to personnel, so they have to get to know how to use technology. But yeah, no, it's not, like you said, you're confused, it's not that.
It's not
Your
straightforward.
job.
Yeah, we've been here a while now, and I still am not completely sure.
Cause you don't commute every day. You could be-
That's probably true,
Right. Exactly, right.
yeah.
I'm happy to
Alright, thank
go
you.
for anything.
Thanks. Agenda for the CCSD joint meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Taking notes. Sign ordinance.
Sign ordinance,
Chap
I
line,
mean, meet and greet first.
Wow, that helps
Put that first. I
Doesn't
think we
reverse.
wanna talk about the sign ordinance, the
Chaplain.
chap line.
Yep.
Fields,
field fees and cost of
camp.
camp, yep, having taught camp at one of the schools.
There was one other thing.
What else did we say?
We don't have anything
Well,
left on the SRO.
Facility, I guess,
Well,
stuff facilities,
Is there, will we be adding SROs? the promise from the district in the spring was that there would be SROs at all of the elementary schools, so, you know, if it's something that we're going to eventually have to discuss.
Well, they're putting them in all elementary schools, just not all
At the same
Mhm.
time.
You didn't read that fine print?
I think, so we're gonna have more than one meeting, in fact, we can even set them up during this meeting. Because it's so easy to set them up normally. I think we should, so that's something, I don't know if we need to ask them about that, are you gonna put more in now, let them
Well,
breathe
maybe
for a
we just
second,
wanna
but-
ask them whether or not they're, you
We're
know,
talking
they're-
about
they're-
budget.
they're-
Next
they're-
on the
they're-
budget
agreements
too.
coming down.
Right,
So we
exactly,
could
if
use
we're talking
that.
about
They want the
budgets
cars
and
and-
staffing and cars and all of these
Yeah.
things,
So-
I'd rather sooner rather than
Something to
later.
ask.
The other thing I wanted to maybe ask them, and so I had sent a letter to Christine Ackerman because when there have been hate incidents in the schools, they only send an email to the kids in that school, to the parents of kids in that school. And the Holocaust Human Rights Committee came to me on this, but I get constantly people are asking me, and they don't notify us that there was an issue. And so I asked them, is this something you would notify us that there's an issue, because we get all of those questions. I don't have to answer, I can say, yes, there was an incident, but they should really be distributing that information. So Christine emailed me back and said, oh, it would cause all this confusion, which is crazy, because she would be the one dictating how it gets sent, so there wouldn't be any confusion. But she did not, she said, oh, I'll speak to the board about it, and I haven't heard anything about it, and I would like to see what their thoughts are on that.
I think it's worth having a discussion about communication of community
Incident.
Yeah.
school incidents that are impactful to the community.
I agree. I
Mhm.
actually do hear that feedback a lot, having, you know, friends with older kids at the middle school,
Right,
friends that have children at the high school, and then it's like,
it's like a
who
game
got
of
what
telephone.
email, yes,
I think what I
yes.
recall are standards to decide what goes to just one school community and what goes to the entire district. So I think there's some incidents that go to the entire district. I really can't speak to what that is now,
Yeah, we could explore.
but maybe they can explain that to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile
Yeah,
discussion.
I do
We-
too.
we get questions because a lot of people don't
I don't understand.
think about
Differentiate.
where the
Yes,
lines are.
yes.
So if we understand what they're doing, we can see if there's any feedback we have.
Okay, so we are looking for explanation of the school incidents that impact the community, and we're looking for
Maybe
expanded
specifically
Notifications.
notifications and
Expanded
incidents.
communications and notifications.
I would say hate incidents or other or other
Safety.
community-wide concern.
Safety incidents too, maybe.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
true.
I think that's. I would like to know, you know.
Yeah, because when there was that
Safety.
incident at Greeley, I don't know what.
Only Greeley parents were informed, and the whole
know that
community was talking about it and
Yes. Yeah.
concerned
Right, so
and
the phone call.
Yes,
Yeah,
and there was
so
a few incidents
so I think that's
in
something
the
that we should.
bathrooms.
Yeah.
Overdoses and stuff, and people are talking about it, so.
Well, I'm not sure that everything.
I don't know
people talk
overdoses,
about,
I
we
think
need
that's
to
a
get
HIPAA issue.
qualifications.
No, I don't need to know the name, you know, I'm not talking about personal details, but,
I think we're gonna get into definitional issues about what,
well, I'm
What
curious
that
to hear what they
means.
say.
I just wanna know-
I'm- yeah, I'm
Yeah.
curious
And
to have the
look, we don't need to
conversation.
dictate that, I
No,
think
I-
we should have the conversation
Absolutely.
and then they can come up with
Absolutely.
what makes sense for the school district and
If we
Absolutely.
understand their policy, that may just
Absolutely.
be as much as we need,
I
you
agree,
know, in their reasoning, so
Mhm.
That's
let's
right.
just start with a discussion about it.
Mhm.
I agree.
Okay, so we're asking for an explanation of CCSD policy regarding hate, safety.
Well, not just an explanation, I think we're also asking them to consider, I'll help you with wordsmith, but I
Yeah.
think we're also asking them to consider notifying the town when there are
Parents.
certain incidents that impact the greater community.
Right, so I
Because
think,
we're getting those questions.
right, so I think the first thing we want though is an explanation of their policy. When is it that they only notify
Yes,
the school
yes.
versus the school community versus the community at large?
Yes.
And then,
Right.
okay,
Yeah, I think first we understand and then we can discuss.
the expansion of it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, anything else?
That's a lot,
That's a lot.
that's a lot.
It actually is a lot, so.
I think,
It's a great place to start.
yeah.
Okay.
Looking forward to
Did
it.
they have anything they had asked to
No.
put on?
No, they just wanted to know an
They just wanted an
agenda
agenda.
today, they wanted for tomorrow for their meeting.
Okay, well, maybe maybe when they see, they'll have some reaction and additions.
Thank
That was
you.
easy.
I just wanted to make sure the board, you know, even though I emailed them, that they're opining on it and not just Christine.
Well,
Because
there's still
Christine
no
works for the
opportunity to
board,
speak.
not the other way around. So, okay. Alright, so now we're gonna move to the resolution declaring Indigenous Peoples' Day.
So there was an issue there, I thought that we should send it to the CREI committee and
Which I
Lisa,
did
you
on the
mentioned
13th,
you did, but
and I forwarded it to
unfortunately,
the whole board
Yes, I
just
saw it.
earlier today, so everyone can,
yes, thank
Confirm.
you. Unfortunately, for some reason, they did not receive it. But
did she
I
look
know
at her
we're
town
getting-
email?
I did ask, yes, as far as I know, yes. So the question is, can we wait? I know the day is for October 9th.
Yeah, and that
So
would.
is
So
it-
we
do
can-
we have a meeting?
We are meeting on the 26th, we can adopt it on the 26th,
Yeah.
but we should talk about it at least amongst
Oh, yeah,
ourselves.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
if there are
then-
changes we wanna make and then send it to them.
Yeah,
Know how
Yeah,
they
but I
have some
think,
comments.
that's
being that we
fine.
have
Yeah.
a committee on
Sure.
race equity and inclusion,
Yeah.
they
just make
And
sure
also,
they
I
check
think
their
maybe
emails.
the historian or some historical resource.
That's fine, yeah. So, let's talk about changes we have and then we can resend it to the CREI and anyone else who wants to, who we think should look at it. And then we can adopt it next
I have
week.
no objections to the changes you suggested, the reason, correct.
Yeah, same here.
Same.
Although I've never seen it honestly with an apostrophe after the peoples. I've never seen it. I've looked at so many examples.
I've seen with it, well, who would be the definitive source on it?
It's just a grammatical.
In my
Yeah.
iPhone,
Yeah.
it does have an apostrophe after the S.
Okay.
Yeah, because
I mean, I'm just saying, I don't care.
Yeah.
Whatever's grammatically, whatever's correct.
think that it's grammatically correct.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
agnostic if
it's
it's
just-
reflecting and.
It's in the possessive,
Right.
because you say indigenous people, right? So if you're gonna say it's their day, indigenous peoples, and you're putting apostrophe. But maybe people just customarily don't put it.
I think,
You know,
I think
grammatically
the
it
phrase
should be
is
there.
people's day, indigenous peoples.
So that's
Um,
apostrophe.
right.
So it's S apostrophe, that's my understanding.
Well, if there's an apostrophe, it's definitely S apostrophe, it's
Yeah.
not.
Right.
I didn't, I
Yeah.
just never
S
saw it with
apostrophe.
an
It's
apostrophe, but
plural, right?
Hi, plural and, well, it's
Okay.
And we're gonna adopt Holly's changes.
yeah, and I was good with all of your changes, Holly. So we can incorporate those.
So I had one comment, I was going to kind of read in my own statement, just, and it's not controversial at all, there are copies of it for you guys to take a look at, I just wanted to share, you know, as a child of Italian American immigrant grandparents, as a granddaughter, a great granddaughter, I just don't want the day, I know that there's a lot of, for whatever reason, Columbus Day has become like a lightning rod issue, and I think that what's missing from the conversation is the reason why we put Columbus Day on the books to begin with. It stems from the lynching of 11 Italian immigrants in New Orleans in 1891, and then President Harrison adopted Columbus Day a year later to kind of honor the 11 people that were unjustly murdered. So I feel like that's part of the story that's missing. And why people may feel certain sensitivity about Columbus Day, it honors this horrible historic incident and was an opportunity for Italian American immigrants to feel like their accomplishments and their the things that they've done for this country were recognized. So I'm gonna be reading this and I'm not asking us to make any changes to the resolution. I'm
Well, I
happy.
actually beg to
Take a look.
differ, and I actually think we could make a change based on that to the resolution.
Don't have any others. I'm like very
Sure.
happy and proud to adopt this resolution. I take no issue with it at all.
But
maybe
we can incorporate some of this into a
I just don't
whereas
wanna
clause
take
and say
away
whereas we
from-
recognize the
I just don't wanna take away from what we're trying to
Well,
do with Indigenous
maybe-
Peoples' Day,
Mhm.
but I do like I do feel like the historical context is kind of missing from the conversation.
I think you're right, Ally,
Yeah,
I
I
think
do
people
too.
don't understand what Columbus Day was
Right.
based on the conversation we hear in the media.
Separate Christopher Columbus and
People don't
his
understand
legacy from the
But
contributions.
I think that this is something that deserves more of an explanation than we could provide in the resolution.
I think we should do both.
In a whereas clause.
I
So I
am-
think, I like your idea of reading this and leaving the resolution
And-
as is.
And
I
since we're
think we
giving it
could-
another week, you guys can think about it and
I
give me
think
feedback.
we should add a whereas clause and incorporate
About
some of this.
Italian American.
Yes, whereas we recognize the,
in my
importance
research,
and
I was
we
researching this
also
because I knew I
recognize
wanted to
this.
prepare something. I will say that President Biden actually made a statement regarding this incident and Italian American contributions to this country in his statement from Columbus Day last year. It was one of the things that I found,
so
and
let's look at that.
just, it's there, I could also send it to you
I'm
guys.
coming
I
from, I'm admittedly
100%
coming
think
from a
we
place of
should do this.
ignorance, I'm not familiar with this at all.
Exactly,
I was
Yeah.
first never heard
Yeah,
of it.
exactly.
So
I
am
100%
My
think
parent, my
we should add a
grandparents always
whereas.
have been immigrants, and I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know about this either.
exactly.
I don't think people talk about it.
So I
Yeah.
think that it's like important to recognize it wasn't, the holiday doesn't come from, yay, let's celebrate Columbus and his atrocities. It was, let's throw a bone to the Italian American immigrants who are feeling very persecuted right now. And there's actually a history of lynchings against toward Italian American immigrants in this country, and that was part of my history lesson when I was
Can-
reading up on this.
Can you help us come up with, I think you should read this, but I think now that we're kind of talking about this, it should be acknowledged in this resolution. It's not gonna take away from declaring it as Indigenous Peoples' Day, but I think you can acknowledge the history because we're actually changing it, right? So I think we should, and can you help me come up with a whereas clause or two to add in
If the rest
here?
of the board is comfortable with adding something, like I obviously
Well, we'll
wanna
see how it
support
reads.
and
I mean,
support
work on it.
articles.
I'm happy to look at it,
Well,
again,
let's see how it reads.
I can't say yes or no, this is the first I'm hearing of it.
Christina or Robert, if you wanna take a look.
So I will take
Oh,
this
sorry.
and put in Holly's comments.
I'll work on something.
You'll
But
work with
condensed.
me on
And if
a
you guys don't
whereas
like it, I
clause or
won't be
two.
offended.
And then we'll recirculate it to the board and we'll recirculate it to the CREI. And we can call Gray also and see if he wants to look at that one whereas clause. Although I like the changes you made, so he might not even need to.
Yeah, I tried to make it something that,
Fudge a little.
just because I think it's one of those historical things that may not have a definitive answer.
I agree,
So I just wanted to make it still read accurately, but not.
I agree.
So we have 3 weeks really, I mean, it's okay to do it on the 9th, right?
No,
No,
we
we don't
need
need
to
it
do it
before.
before the,
Okay. So we have
because
2
first of all,
weeks.
it's the 10th is our meeting on a Tuesday, which is after it.
Oh, I,
For what
So,
it's worth, I just Googled that.
It starts
and
on
here,
Monday.
I
Take this?
popped
Yes,
in
yeah,
and
no,
looked
sure.
at
oh, I was
the
looking at Monday
in
instead of.
reference to
Do you want me to make you a
whitehouse.gov.
so I think we certainly have a week, it's not gonna take, it'll take 2 minutes to make, 5 minutes to make Holly's changes. You'll work on this, we can insert those and we can circulate it, people don't need a week to look at it. So I'll send it back to the CREI, just make sure they're checking their email, cause
Well,
it'll
they
send
are,
over as
they
data.
they didn't receive it.
So
Maybe it should
And
be two separate, instead of conflating them, I need two separate ones, I'm looking
I
here.
was kind of
just-
thinking
What
that,
about
but I was
Whitehouse
thinking
dot gov.
American
let's see if we can
history.
make it,
I'm gonna
you'll look
White
at it,
House
see what you
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
You'll look at it, see what you think when we put it together.
I'm just saying, cause I'm looking at whitehouse.gov,
Mhm.
because I happen to Google it right now, and the statement from Biden, and it looks like he's got a resolution, it's separate apart. It's not, so clearly he did it,
Yes, he differentiated.
two different.
He
clearly
did
wasn't
two
different.
separate resolutions?
Well, it looks like this is just a resolution on what you just brought up,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing in here very quickly, about
Indigenous
indigenous
peoples.
people, so he
Yes.
must have done too, but we can find it out. So, this is from, correct, 2022.
Yeah, it seems like it's something we could do some more research on.
Well, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
for being
bringing that
receptive.
All right,
Okay,
what's next?
awesome,
Administrative
That's it, right?
items.
yeah.
Yes,
Alright, we're gonna go to
Jeremy, starting my clock.
Oh, on mine, the clock.
Not yet.
Alright,
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm
Mr. Chairman, ready to do the resolution?
What, do we have something else?
Yeah, just
So,
Hang on, before we do that, I don't think there's anything in the administrative items we
Well,
need.
let's just go through them real
Yes.
quickly. So, payment of claims. We've got our adoption of the monthly reports and adoption of minutes. We're requesting authorization to purchase a wide format printer for the Millwood Water Treatment Plant. We've got authorization to approve the Village of Pleasantville annual operating water budget reconciliation. Rob had an opportunity to go through the budget along with Eric Morrissey from Pleasantville. Rob, what's the number on that, $132,000, which is what we owe them to basically even up the year.
Which is good news, means there's an overall surplus in the water treatment plant budget. And their percentage of that, about $130,000.
Yeah, $132,591.42. And so we'll issue that refund to the Village of Pleasantville. And then we've got our
Talked about these, right?
yeah, the electric car show and the Halloween dog parade. Alrighty? Okay.
Alright, moving to resolutions.
Alright, I guess I'll get started. I move to approve the payment of claims amount of $1,332,160.70 listed in the summary pre-check writing report detailed after detailed report located September 16, 2023. Check was issued and mailed each payment on Wednesday, September 20th of this straight year.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to authorize the hire of Tony Harris to the position of fourth grade police officer within the Newcastle Police Department at an annual salary of $77,764.76 effective October 23rd, 2023. The date Westchester County approves the resignation reinstatement.
I second.
All in favor?
I move to accept the resignation of Robert Petierno, who labored within the Recreation and Parks Department effective September 27th, 2023. The town would like to thank Rob sincerely for his great service.
I second.
All in favor?
Want me to go? I move to authorize the posting and hiring for the position of laborer within the Recreation and Parks Department at the annual salary of $50,119.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to accept the resignation of Rebecca Dolden as member of the Holocaust and Human Rights Committee effective September 15th, 2023. Town would like to thank Rebecca for her service.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I got a long one?
These are usually up to Lisa, Lisa, you can take this. That was
That's alright. You can skip most of the whereas and just move to the resolution first.
Okay. I move to adopt the following resolution to approving a petition to extend the King Greeley Sewer District in the town of Newcastle. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Newcastle and the county of Westchester that the boundaries of the proposed sewer district extension include all that certain plot, piece, or parcel of land with the building improvements thereon erected, situate, lying, and being in the town of Newcastle, county of Westchester, and state of New York, and being more particularly bounded and described as follows. Do I have to read that?
Stated in
As stated in the
Right.
agenda. Can I skip to the next, be it further resolved?
Yes.
And be it further resolved that the town board of the town of Newcastle and the county of Westchester, that it be and hereby is determined as follows. 1 through 5 is written in the agenda.
Does she have to read the resolution?
So the board has
Okay.
before it a resolution approving the extension of the district. The resolution sets forth sort of the requirements for procedural aspects of the law and then goes through a variety of legalistic but required requirements showing that the board complied with the extension of the district. And then the board is then adopting a resolution resulting to extend the district.
So moved as he said.
Second, as he said.
All in favor?
I move to adopt a local law to amend chapter 27 of the code of the town of Newcastle concerning the acceptance and use of donations by the Newcastle Parks and Recreation Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to approve the agreement dated September 13th, 2023 between the town of Newcastle and the Chappaqua Central School District.
Dated today.
Oh.
Today.
Sorry, dated September 19th, 2023 between the town of Newcastle and the Chappaqua Central School District for the facilitation and the carrying out of the school resource officer program for the 2023-2024 and 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to authorize the purchase of a replacement wide format printer at the Millwood Water Treatment Plant from Atlantic Tomorrow's office for the total cost of $11,720.60 as per the quote dated August 30th, 2023. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to approve a reimbursement to the Village of Pleasantville in the amount of $132,591.42 to reflect operating surpluses from the operation of the Millwood Water Treatment Plant for the 2022 fiscal year.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to authorize the Chappaqua Farmers Market to utilize the train station parking lot circle for their Drive Westchester electric vehicle showcase on Saturday, September 2023, from 8 AM to 1 PM.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to authorize the Chappaqua Farmers Market to utilize the train station parking lot circle for their annual Halloween dog parade and contest on Saturday, October 28th, 2023, from 9 AM to 12 PM.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Can I table on
We're
13?
gonna table 13. Yep.
Are you happy now?
Yes.
What's after 13?
14.
Oh, you're pretty good. Is somebody 13th amendment is your
I move
14th
to
amendment?
authorize the appointment of Mike Corso.
Well, hang on,
So
are
we
we
don't
doing
have-
this?
I
We
don't
didn't,
Oh, wait,
do we wanted to wait and
so we're
see if
tabling
another
14
person?
too.
Did you get 14?
I don't have
I don't have
I don't
14.
have 13.
Is that
It's
something that
authorization
came-
to appoint to the SAB.
Are we
Not sure
tabling
what
that one
I'm gonna
too?
read.
Right, no, but I'm wondering, did that come in paper at the
It
end?
did.
Because those of us who kind of rely
use the
on the
computer.
online, we don't,
Yeah, I
We
think
didn't
it was
get it.
added, I think it was added
I
today.
think it was in the second
because it was
set
in-
of
might have been.
emails from Lauren with the resolution.
I
think
yeah,
there
I think I
was.
got that. Oh, maybe I didn't get the second. I didn't see
It
it.
may
Well,
have been amended.
we could do
This is
this one.
revised.
Well, were we
Yeah.
waiting to see if to interview the other person or no?
I don't see it either.
We were appointed.
I thought we were.
I thought we were
I thought we were
appointing the one
appointing.
person.
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
that's.
Okay.
And that they were gonna
Yeah.
want to do have the other person.
Cause she
not on.
emailed back that said she had to do bedtime for her kids,
So
so
I'm sorry
Okay.
about
she
that.
couldn't do the
Yeah,
interview,
that's
so
approved.
I feel
Yeah,
like
we'll do
we,
mine.
you don't feel like we should give her the opportunity to interview?
Well,
Yes, but
We were
this-
very late, so, but there's an opening,
So
so
it's
we're,
just one of it.
we interviewed two people. We interviewed
Where-
one of the two people, cause we were running so late.
Nick reminds us that.
It's okay. We ran late, so we
Oh, I thought it was two positions.
We can,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's one.
Oh, okay,
we can address this.
fine.
Okay,
Okay,
that's
let's
it.
table
Okay.
that, and then
Table that
15?
one.
Yeah,
That
so
would do it.
Tiffany, we're gonna have to schedule for next week, we'll have to figure out the timing.
Mhm.
Alright.
We'll try to do it earlier, maybe before the joint meeting. Just for 15 minutes.
What's the next resolution? We don't.
The
Oh,
next
I'll
resolution
do it.
15.
I move to authorize the waiver of penalties from the 2022-2023 school taxes for SBL 81.9.2.55 for the total amount of $1,125.59.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright, that's it, so we'll adjourn.
So for the record, hold on, for the record, so 14 is not coming.
15 came after 13.
Who wants to second that one?
You were right to ask.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.